This story is about a space commander whose partner goes into labor aboard an alien ship, only for the galaxy's top doctors to mistake childbirth for a medical catastrophe. Commander Elise Danner was not the kind of man to show weakness, not even when his spine felt like it was being wrung through a trash compactor. He paced the sterile corridors of the Zelnari medical frigate Mendicant Glory, his breathing shallow and rapid, sweat streaking his forehead despite the ship's climate control. His partner Maya gripped his hand tight from the floating gurney beside him, and in that moment, he wasn't a seasoned officer of the Terran Intergalactic Fleet. He was a terrified, expectant father whose wife had just gone into labor 2 weeks early on an alien ship full of beings who had never witnessed a human birth. "Please tell me this is a false alarm," Elise muttered, glancing at the monitors clamped to Maya's belly. The display showed readings in Zelnari script, which was elegantly unintelligible to him. Maya groaned through clenched teeth. "If this is false, then I want a refund for the last 39 weeks of back pain." Elise barked a laugh that immediately turned into a strangled hiccup as Maya's face contorted again. Okay, it's not false. We're having a baby, in space, surrounded by aliens who think appendicitis is a mood disorder. Inside the infirmary, the attending physician, a Zelnari named Dr. Gelrix, rotated its 6 ocular stalks toward the couple. The creature's translucent blue skin shimmered with what Elise had learned was its version of polite enthusiasm. "Commander Danner, your mate is experiencing rapid abdominal oscillations. Our scanners detected increasing abdominal fluid pressure. There is an urgent compromise to her thoraco-abdominal wall integrity. She may be splitting in half." "That's called labor," Elise corrected him sharply. Dr. Geltrix twitched, confused. "Labor? As in industrial effort? Mining?" No, not that. Childbirth. She's giving birth. This is normal." The alien's limbs quivered. "You call this normal?" "She is emitting sustained biovulc alarms. Her skeletal structure is exhibiting strain fractures. Her organs are relocating." Elise wiped his forehead with the sleeve of his uniform. "Yes, that's how it works." Dr. Geltrix looked at one of his assistants, who promptly dropped a tray of surgical instruments and retreated to a wall panel, whispering something that sounded suspiciously like an interstellar prayer. The translator mistook it for a weather forecast. Maya screamed again, drawing every eye in the room to her with the kind of attention usually reserved for quantum implosions. "Why is her blood pressure so high?" Dr. Geltrix demanded. "She's in pain." "Is this terminal?" "No." Gelrix raised a trembling tendril. "I must consult the human files. They are outdated, but extensive." Elise turned pale. "Which files?" "The anatomical database from Earth Cycle 2710, acquired directly from the remains of your war hero, Corporal Trent Hammond." Elise blinked. That's a man. That's male anatomy." "Correct. It is our only human baseline. He had exemplary calf musculature. You've based all your knowledge of human physiology on a dead Marine's legs, among other parts." At that moment, Maya's water broke with an audible splash that startled a nearby nurse into dropping a canister of sedatives, which hissed open and flooded the room with calming mist. Half the medical staff immediately passed out, except for one who staggered toward Maya, clumsily activating a surgical tool that looked suspiciously like a butter churn. Dr. Geltrix gasped. "Her fluid sacs have ruptured. Emergency protocol initiated." Before Elise could intervene, a glowing dome descended from the ceiling, encasing Maya in what looked like a laser-based fruit juicer. Alarms blared. Stop! Elise shouted, pounding on the barrier. "You're not helping!" Dr. Geltrix was sweating now, or at least his pores were emitting a kind of sticky glitter mist. "She is undergoing catastrophic bisection trauma. We must preserve the uterus." "No, you absolutely must not teleport her uterus." "Too late," one assistant chirped, tapping a console. "Target acquired." "Abort the procedure," Elise howled. "This is birth, not trauma." Maya, through gritted teeth, barked. "Tell them if they try to yank my uterus out, I'll shove it down their protein vents." Her threat must have translated clearly, because several of the Zelneri scrambled for the exit. Elise climbed onto the console and physically unplugged a power conduit. The fruit juicer dome fizzled out, and Maya groaned in relief. "Listen," he panted, "this is what it looks like when a human female gives birth. There is blood, there is screaming, and it takes hours. You are not witnessing death, you are witnessing life." Dr. Geldrix tilted his head. "But our database says human reproduction involves direct transfer of genetic substrate through a lower aperture, followed by dormancy and clone activation." "That's seahorses," Elise snapped, "and they're not even mammals." "Oh dear," murmured Geldrix. Just then, Maya doubled over, gripping her belly. "I need to push, now." Elise's voice cracked. "Geldrix, get me gloves, hot water, blankets, anything clean, now." The doctor hesitated, then barked orders to the remaining staff, who scattered with varying levels of panic and speed. One returned with what looked like a ceremonial towel embroidered with a Zelneri emperor's face. "It's clean," the nurse insisted. "Holy, even." Elise didn't argue. He knelt beside Maya, took her hand, and looked her in the eye. "You've got this." She gave him a smile that was equal parts grateful and threatening. "I swear, if I live through this, we're never having another." "Deal." As another contraction hit, Elise saw the top of the baby's head, and his heart stuttered. "Crowning." Dr. Geldrix, peeking from behind a sanitation panel, shouted, "Crowning? She is developing another cranium?" "It's the baby." There was no time to explain, just action. Elise guided, Maya pushed, and after an excruciating, beautiful minute that stretched eternity thin, a new cry echoed through the infirmary. A baby. Their baby. Warm and slick and very much alive. The room fell into stunned silence. Then Dr. Geldrix staggered forward, eyes locked on the child. She was not splitting, she was multiplying. Elise sat back, exhausted, shaking, smiling with tears in his eyes. She was giving birth. The translator clicked, hesitated, then updated. Birth equals creation of new organism via female anatomical process, not bisection trauma. A nurse fainted. Dr. Geldrix stood rooted to the floor. 6 ocular stalks pointed directly at the squirming newborn swaddled in the ceremonial towel. One stalk twitched left, then right, then swiveled slowly toward Elise. "Commander Danner," he said in a breathy tone, "your progeny is producing vocalizations. Is this a secondary alert of internal hemorrhage?" Elise, still kneeling beside Maya, didn't look up. He was too focused on the soft, impossibly small fingers curling around his thumb. "That's crying," he said gently. "It's good. Means lungs are working. Everything's working." Another nurse, who had apparently recovered from her earlier fainting spell, was now staring at the placenta with the kind of cautious fascination usually reserved for live explosives. "Something else is exiting her," she whispered. "Is this an afterbirth? Or a redundant sibling?" "It's part of the process," Elise said. "That's the placenta. Don't touch it. Or do. I honestly don't care right now. Just stop looking like you're about to poke it with a broom." Behind him, Maya exhaled a ragged breath and let her head fall back against the gurney. Her face was pale, her brow slick with sweat, but she was alive. Tired, spent, radiant in the kind of way only someone who just pushed a person out of their body could be. "Is it over?" she mumbled. Elise nodded, smiling through tears. "Yeah, he's perfect." Maya's eyes fluttered open. "He?" I checked. Definitely a he. She snorted weakly. "Told you." Dr. Geldrix slowly stepped closer, tentatively lifting a scanner the size of a toolbox. "May I examine the neonate?" "Carefully," Elise said, "and not with that thing. You almost vaporized Maya's uterus 30 minutes ago." The scanner was quickly set aside. Geldrix instead activated a more modest instrument, a wand-like device that emitted soft pulses of blue light. "Astonishing," the doctor murmured as he moved the scanner over the baby's chest. "Cardiopulmonary rhythm is established. Cranial structure is pliable but symmetrical. Temperature is elevated. He's a mammal, Elise cut in. Warm-blooded. That's normal. Right. Normal. Gelrick sounded like he was trying the word on for the first time. Another Zelnari assistant entered the room carrying what appeared to be a tray of gelatinous orbs. For post-procedure nourishment, he announced proudly. Elise squinted. What is that? Protein spheres, made from fermented plankton and compressed nutrient sludge. I'm going to go ahead and say no. They're flavored, the assistant added helpfully. We have granola bars in the go bag, Elise muttered to Maya. She gave him a faint thumbs up. Over the next half hour, the infirmary shifted from chaotic triage site to stunned debrief zone. Staff moved slowly, as if afraid any sudden motion might trigger another medical emergency. Elise helped clean up Maya and the baby while trying to explain the broad strokes of human obstetrics to beings who had thought the word gestation referred to slow internal combustion. One particularly nervous technician kept asking if the baby might explode. Explode? Elise said flatly. No, he might spit up on you, possibly pee, but not explode. We've never seen an organism produce another within itself like this, Gelrick said, his eyes darting from Maya to the baby like a spectator at a tennis match. Our species propagates through cellular budding and nutrient swarms. This is intimate, violent, beautiful. You fainted, Elise reminded him. I now understand that was a culturally inappropriate reaction. Tried, deeply unhelpful. The baby let out a soft hiccup and curled closer to Maya's chest. Elise wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Exhaustion was etched into every line of her face, but so was something fiercer, triumph maybe. Relief, love. How long will recovery take? Gellerix asked. She lost considerable blood volume. Her abdominal wall integrity remains compromised. 6 to 8 weeks usually, Elise said. Longer if there are complications. She'll need rest, nutrients, time. Fascinating, Gelrick said, making notes with a stylus that hovered in the air. We must update the anatomical files immediately. I will request the reclassification of the term bisection trauma to avoid future misunderstandings. That'd be nice. Gelrix tapped another button on his console, and a holographic interface appeared above the baby. The screen displayed vitals, a visual representation of the baby's developing organ systems, and bizarrely what looked like an award recommendation form. What's that last part? Elise asked. Nomination for cultural excellence. Your mate has contributed significantly to the understanding of reproductive variance. She may be eligible for the intergalactic honor of bioadaptive bravery. Maya cracked an eye open. Do I get a medal? Possibly a sash. I'll take it. The next few hours passed in a strange blur. The baby was cleared by the medical staff for external habitation, a strange way to say healthy. Elise and Maya were moved to a quieter chamber with softer lighting and less chance of their son being confused for a loose organ. Still, the ship buzzed with rumors. A birth, a living child emerging from another. Most of the Zelnari had gathered biological knowledge from scans, not lived experiences. Birth was a line item in a report. Now, it was something they had witnessed, screaming, messy, undeniable. By the evening cycle, Elise sat beside Maya's bed, the baby nestled in the crook of her arm, both of them asleep. A soft chime announced a visitor, and Elise opened the door to find Geltrix, holding a datapad and looking remarkably solemn. I came to apologize, he said. Elise sighed. For what part? The she splitting in half line or the let's teleport her uterus plan? Both. All our translators were wrong. Our files were incomplete. But more than that, we lacked context. We didn't understand that this was something normal, but also extraordinary. Elise rubbed his face. You panicked. It happens. Just be glad she didn't clock you with the delivery tray. Indeed? Gelrix hesitated. Would you allow us to document this process fully? With consent, of course. For medical education, for understanding. Elise glanced at Maya, then back at Geldrix. I'll ask her. She might say yes. She might also say she wants to be left alone for the next 10 years. Geldrix bowed slightly. Fair. As he turned to leave, the doctor paused. Commander, this was our first real experience with human birth. We were trained to handle war wounds, trauma, infections. We thought we could manage anything, but this felt like something we were entirely unprepared for. Elise nodded. Welcome to parenthood. The Exolnari medical bay had been transformed. What had once been a sterile, intimidating gallery of surgical robotics and antiseptic lighting now hummed with an awkward but genuine attempt at human comfort. Warm, amber light filtered through the room instead of the usual clinical white. The air was filled with the faint sound of lullabies badly translated, slightly off-key versions filtered through the universal translator. The Zelnari were trying. And failing, but trying. Elise stood beside Maya, watching her breathe. She slept deeply, the exhaustion of labor and recovery finally yielding to rest. Their son Jackson, they'd finally decided, slept in the modified stasis cradle beside her bed, repurposed from a containment pod usually used for volatile specimens. It had been sanitized thoroughly. Elise didn't care that it had once held a venomous jelly wolf from the Varnassi reefs. It had temperature control and soft padding. That made it a crib. He turned as the door opened and in stepped in unlikely procession. Gelrix, 2 Zelnari cultural liaisons, and a rather nervous ambassador in a ceremonial sash. Behind them hovered a tray, carried by a floating servitor drone, which bore what appeared to be a congratulatory sculpture shaped vaguely like a pineapple with legs. This, Geldrix announced solemnly, is your official galactic birth recognition ceremony. Elise blinked. Is that a thing? It is now. The ambassador stepped forward and cleared his throat, a sound that resembled a flute being stepped on. Commander Danner, on behalf of the Union of Sapient Species, we recognize your and your mate's contribution to xenobiological diversity. You have demonstrated courage, composure, and significant uterine integrity. Elise tried not to laugh. Thanks. We have updated our records, Geldrix added quickly. There is now a new entry. Live birth, human female, high blood pressure, moderate screaming, termination of event signaled by neonatal vocalizations. Sounds about right. The ambassador held up a gleaming silver disc. This is the scroll of first contact reproductive clarity. It denotes that your child is the first human to be born aboard a Zelnari vessel. Elise accepted it, already planning to hide it somewhere Jackson could not accidentally chew on it. Maya stirred, squinting groggily at the entourage. What's happening? Diplomatic recognition ceremony, Elise said, and they brought you a pineapple with legs. Maya gave a tired chuckle. Nice. After a few awkward bows, chirps, and one brief chant, the officials filed out, leaving behind the sculpture, 2 baskets of alien fruit, and a birth certificate printed on a crystalline tablet roughly the size of a microwave. Elise leaned it against the wall. The next day brought complications. Jackson had developed a mild case of jaundice, something Elise recognized immediately from his own childhood health briefings. The yellowish tint to his skin set off a flurry of alerts in the medical system. Gelrix returned within minutes, clearly flustered. His pigment modulation is fluctuating. Is this an adaptive camouflage response? No, it's bilirubin buildup. His liver's just getting the hang of things. He needs phototherapy. We have lights, Gelrix said. We have so many lights. 5 minutes later, Jackson was nestled in a makeshift bassinet beneath a focused spectrum photonic emitter originally used for plant propagation. Elise sat beside him, gently shielding the baby's eyes, while a nurse read the instruction manual aloud, mispronouncing every other word. Still, it worked. Jackson's skin began returning to its normal hue within hours. Later that cycle, a group of curious Zelnari medical students arrived, under the pretense of offering supplemental care, but really just wanted to see a human baby blink. One asked, "Will it molt?" "No," Elise said. Another asked, "Does he have venom?" "No." A third whispered, What if it imprints on me and follows me home? I'd pay money to see that, Elise muttered. The final straw came when one of them attempted to scan Jackson's DNA and the console crashed, displaying only a shrugging emoji. Your child's genome is complicated, the student said, shaken. There are sequences we cannot identify, proteins that shouldn't bind, methylation patterns that look like encryption. That's called evolution, Elise said. Or possibly genetics homework. I don't understand. Despite the chaos, there were quiet moments too. Elise and Maya spent long hours holding their son, marveling at how small he was, how loud, how he could be absolutely serene one minute and shrieking the next like he'd just been dropped into deep space. But there was one problem they hadn't expected: diapers. No one aboard the Mendicant Glory had anticipated the need for infant waste management. The replicators could fabricate towels, sterilizers, even formula. But diapers? Not on the manifest. I'm not putting a protein compression bandage on his butt, Maya said flatly. Elise sighed. Give me 30 minutes and a sewing kit. He fashioned a crude reusable diaper from gauze and straps, and while it technically worked, Jackson expressed his feelings about it with a high-pressure incident that sprayed directly into Geltrix's face. Is that a defense mechanism? The doctor sputtered, dripping. It's called peeing. Fascinating. By the end of the week, the medical team had become surprisingly competent at co-managing postnatal care. They developed a monitoring routine, set up a neonatal nutrition tracker, and stopped trying to catalog every single bodily function Jackson displayed. Still, the ship's system kept mislabeling him as high-risk biological anomaly. We need to leave, Maya said one evening. They're nice, but I'm not raising our son on a ship where the bedsheets have serial numbers. Elise nodded. I've already requested transfer clearance. The Solace Drift will rendezvous with us in 3 days. Civilian cruiser, earthbound. Maya breathed out. Good. I miss gravity. I miss soap that doesn't smell like pickled starfruit. On their last day aboard the Mendicant Glory, Geltrix arrived with a data crystal. It contains a full record of the birth, recovery, and all care administered. For your human physicians. Thanks, Elise said. There's also a personal message, Geltrix added awkwardly. From me, for your son, should he ever wish to understand how his arrival changed 5 galaxies. Elise took the crystal. I'll make sure he hears it. Geltrix hesitated at the door. I will remember this experience, Commander. Not as a failure of medicine, but as a lesson in humility. You weren't the only one humbled, Elise said. So were we. As they boarded the shuttle that would take them to the Solace Drift, Elise held Jackson in his arms and turned for one last look at the alien medical team lined up to wave them off. The baby hiccuped. One nurse fainted again. The Solace Drift was a civilian cruiser built not for war or science, but for long-haul comfort. It smelled faintly of coffee, recycled pine, and cinnamon protein wafers, a massive improvement from the medicinal haze that clung to the Mendicant Glory. It had artificial gravity tuned to Earth standards, private quarters with walls that didn't hum, and doors that slid open without hissing like angry reptiles. Elise felt himself relax for the first time in weeks. Jackson lay bundled in his arms, snoring softly against his chest. Maya walked beside him. A little slow still, but steady. She wore real fabric, not a sterilized medical gown or smart polymer shift, and there was actual color in her cheeks again. Their quarters were small but cozy, a real bed, a private washroom, and, finally, diapers, human ones, complete with absurd cartoon animals on them. Elise stood at the viewport, staring out into the swirl of stars as the ship jumped into phase space. It would take 6 weeks to get home. Time enough to heal, to breathe, to be a family. That first night, they slept together in the same bed, Jackson in a pod crib beside them. Maya woke twice to feed him. Elise woke 4 times just to check that he was still breathing. When Jackson let out a screech at 3 o'clock that could have woken the dead, Elise accidentally slapped himself in the face, trying to scramble out of bed. "You okay?" Maya asked groggily. "Concussion," he muttered. "Minor. You're not even the one who gave birth. I never said I was tougher." A few days into the journey, they were summoned to the cruiser's small medbay for a routine checkup. The attending physician, a graying woman named Dr. Melanie Curtis, took one look at Jackson and smiled. "Looks like a baby," she said simply. Elise nearly burst into tears from relief. Dr. Curtis reviewed the data crystal from the Zelnare and raised an eyebrow. They cataloged Maya's cervix dilation in hundredths of a millimeter. Did they have to be this detailed? "They were terrified," Elise said. Curtis glanced through the files again. This one marked uterus containment teleportation? That wasn't a joke? Notes. "Well," she muttered, "remind me to never deliver on an alien vessel." The medbay had proper equipment for human recovery. Curtis ran a full postpartum exam for Maya, confirming what Elise had hoped. No internal tearing, no infections, and healing progressing within expected parameters. "You'll still need a good 5 weeks minimum to regain full strength," Curtis warned. 6 before you should even think about exercise. Pelvic floor's holding, but don't test it, and let your abdominal muscles come back at their own pace. "Trust me," Maya said. "I'm not doing crunches anytime soon." Curtis turned to Elise. "And you?" "I'm not bleeding from anywhere. I figure I'm ahead of the game." Curtis didn't smile, but her eyes twinkled. Later that week, Maya sat cross-legged on the bed, Jackson cradled in her arms, and watched as Elise stared at the display pad in his lap. "You've been watching that message from Geltrix again?" she said. Elise shrugged. "It's weirdly touching." He tapped the pad, and the Zelnari doctor appeared in hologram form, looking both dignified and deeply awkward. "To the progeny of Commander Elise Danner and Maya Lorne. You were born in the stars. Not metaphorically, literally. I was there. I believed your mother was undergoing catastrophic structural collapse. I thought your father had lost his mind when he told me this chaos was normal. We were wrong. You were not a sign of species failure. You were a sign of continuation, of hope." Gelrix paused, clearly uncomfortable with emotions. "I have delivered thousands of beings. None like you. None as alarming. Or inspiring. I do not understand humans, but I admire them, and I will tell every generation of medics who trains under me about the day I thought a woman was splitting in half, and instead she gave life." The message ended. Elise looked at Maya. "For what it's worth, I think you scared them more than a Thanati plague." "Good," she said, leaning back against the pillows. "Let them remember me." Elise took Jackson and laid him gently into the crib. The infant stirred but didn't wake. Maya rested her head on Elise's shoulder. The cruiser hummed softly beneath them. 6 weeks passed in a slow, sweet rhythm. Feedings, diaper changes, occasional showers, whispered conversations in the dark. Jackson's cries mellowed, his eyes focused, his fists unclenched sometimes. Maya's color returned. Elise began to sleep for more than 3 hours at a time. They talked about names, about home, about what life would look like planet-side again. Finally, Earth loomed ahead, growing larger in the viewport, a swirling blue jewel wrapped in cloud. Elise felt something tighten in his chest. Relief, maybe? Or awe? Or the overwhelming awareness that everything was about to be real again. As they descended into the atmosphere, the ship's AI offered a standard customs query. "Are you bringing any foreign bioorganisms into Earth jurisdiction?" Elise snorted. "Just the one we made ourselves." The landing was smooth. Their first breath of real, oxygen-rich Earth air tasted like salt and ozone and memories. The spaceport medical team was waiting, briefed, calm, not at all panicked. Dr. Curtis had sent a full report ahead. Jackson was checked, cleared, and officially registered with a Terran birth certificate. There were no screaming alarms, no teleportation attempts, no fainting, just handshakes. Smiles. The gift of a teddy bear with a stitched-on fleet emblem. As Elise carried his son through the arrival gate, Maya limping slightly beside him, a reporter called out. "Commander Danner, How was it giving birth aboard an alien vessel? Elise stopped, turned, and with the barest hint of a grin said, "Well, they thought she was splitting in half." The laughter was real, the headlines inevitable, and the story retold for years in academies, medical forums, and late-night holocasts. But to Elise, the real miracle wasn't in the drama or the fame. It was in the soft, snuffling breaths of his son in the night, in Maya's slow but steady recovery, in the way they had faced chaos and made it through, together. Not because humans were superior, but because, sometimes, humanity could make something beautiful out of terror. Something fragile, something loud, something new, and that was more than enough